is now 9:40, so we'll go ahead and get started. Good morning and welcome to this session, Google Classroom for Parents and Caregivers. We'd like to first introduce ourselves. We have 5 facilitators, 4 of us pictured here on this slide. My name is Heather Machetta. I'm the one pictured in the lower left part of the quadrant of pictures there. I am a curriculum and instruction coordinator with the Allegheny Intermediate Unit. And the other 4 of us, we are members of the Teaching and Learning Division, the remote learning team, focusing on professional development for primarily teachers at the Allegheny Intermediate Unit. Also, the other 3 participants here, you see Kevin Connor in the upper right. Kevin and I will be doing a majority of the presenting, and then Jana and Tyler, they will be monitoring the chat and answering questions specifically related to Google Classroom. The 4 of us are members of the teaching and learning team, which means we primarily serve teachers in our professional development. This is the first session that we have offered for caregivers and parents, and we are humbled by the number of people who are joining us today. We're thrilled that you are all here. In case you're not familiar with the AIU, we are an educational service agency. We serve the 42 school districts in Allegheny County. But just to be clear, we are not the Pennsylvania Department of Education, so we can't speak to official state law or policy. The question that's on everybody's minds, what's going to happen in the fall, we can't even speak to that. We can't even speculate. We are also not representative of any particular school districts, so we are not able to answer district-specific questions. If you do have any specific questions about a school's technology or procedures, it's best to start with the teacher of the child in your care, or maybe the building administrator. We're also honored to be joined by a 5th panelist today, Jennifer Ehalt from Common Sense Media. She'll have a moment to introduce herself in just a second here. She's here to share some resources with us. Jen and Common Sense Media have been a longtime partner of the AIU. We've been working together for about 8 years. We've been very closely working to offer professional development and resources for families across the region. So Jen's going to take a moment to introduce herself and talk about her role in today's session.
Good morning. Excuse me. Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. Really excited to be presenting with the folks at the IU. We've been definitely partnering over these last few years and offering all kinds of great resources. And throughout the conversation, you're going to see me kind of jumping into the chat and just sharing links, which are links out to the Common Sense website. So if you're not familiar, I'm putting that first link in already. So this takes you to our site. We're really just known to offer resources as parents are parenting in this digital age. So advice and resources around all these things, in particular, Google Classroom. And so don't mind me in the chat, grab what you can. When I put these links in the chat, all you have to do is highlight it, right click, and that'll give you a copy option. And then don't feel overwhelmed because all of the links I'm sharing are all located on one of the very last slides of the presentation. So they're all in one place. And so with that being said, I'm going to turn it back over to Heather and Kevin, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the chat.
Thanks, Jen. We're so glad you're here. And Jen is joining us from Chicago today. So just a quick overview, quick orientation. We're using the chat for questions and comments that participants may have throughout the session. We'll try to answer your questions, but there will also be an FAQ document for any questions that we're not able to answer. And our intent is to have that FAQ document compiled and hopefully sent out to the email that you use to register for today's session send that out tomorrow. I see also that there's a question in the chat, can I record the session? We actually are going to be recording the session. We are recording the session. We can't see any of you. Your questions in the chat are not being recorded. Anything you would post there is not being recorded. All that's being recorded is what is on the screen and the small window of whoever is speaking and the voice the voice that is sharing. The reason is because there may be people who cannot attend our sessions but would still want this information. Also, if you would want to go back and reference any of the information or rewatch anything, because it's a relatively quick half-hour session, our plan is also to share the recorded version of this session along with that FAQ document, hopefully early next week. So we're going to start out actually by just giving you a basic overview of what we'll cover. In a moment, we'll turn it over to Kevin Connor, and he will be sharing some basics of Google Classroom. I'll be coming back in a bit to share some tips and tricks to maximize learning. And then throughout the session, we have Jen's resources that she'll be sharing in the chat from Common Sense Media. So to begin, just to collect a little bit of information to see who is here and hopefully build a little bit of community to see we are all in this together, we have a quick poll, just 2 easy, quick questions. You should see that on your screen in a moment. Just take a moment, if you would, and just respond to those 2 questions. You should hopefully be able to answer more than one, if more than one is applicable in question 2. And once everybody has responded to the poll, I'll be able to share on screen those results. '73 people who have voted so far, about 15 more. Polling is slowed down, so I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. If you didn't participate, if you weren't able to participate, not a problem. You can just get a sense of who we have in our session. So hopefully on the screen now you can see we have a lot of people who are new to Google Classroom, and we have a lot of elementary participants. Very interesting. All right. So the idea was really just so that we have an idea of who's here, and we all see that there are people who are new to Google Classroom, and really we are in this together, whether you are experienced and just here to get some new tips, or whether you've been around Google Classroom for a little while, or you're brand new to it. There are some challenges, and hopefully everyone will pick up. So Kevin, if you could advance to the next slide, we have a great quote from Casey Bell. And I'll just pause a moment and let you read through this. So whether you are new to Google Classroom, whether you are new to this remote learning, or whether you've been in it for a little while, I think what Casey says is so important. She's so right, with some grace and forgiveness of, most importantly, ourselves, but also of the children and of their teachers. We can not only survive this last month of school, but our kids can really, truly thrive in these last couple of weeks. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Kevin, and he's going to take you through some Google Classroom overviews.
Thank you, Heather. Thanks, Jennifer and Tyler and Jana as well for making this a team effort. And good morning, everyone. I'm going to walk you through the Google Classroom and try to highlight a lot of the things that, as we've been working with teachers for the past 6 weeks, things that have come up that may be helpful to you to help your child as well in the Google Classroom. But let's start with, why is everyone using Google Classroom? Where did it come from? And actually, Google Classroom was designed by teachers for teachers. So a group of teachers approached Google and asked them if they could create this application, because prior to that, the only way a teacher and a student could share documents was just by putting them in Google Drive somewhere, and they could both find it. And you can imagine that's kind of like scattering things all over the top of your desk. It gets hard to find things after a while. So Google Classroom is really meant to do what I say on the slide here. It's meant to facilitate the flow of materials between teachers and students, And so when the teachers make an assignment, then the student sees that assignment, can work on it, send it back to the teacher, and then if it's a graded product, then they'll actually see that they got a grade back from the teacher. So it's really just a wonderful thing that didn't exist more than 5 years ago, and it has changed dramatically over the years and gotten better and better. But we understand it can be a little bit confusing when you first look at it, and obviously you haven't been in there until recently, so you may not have much of an idea of the layout. So that's what we're going to try to walk you through today. So when you open your browser, well, your student or child opens the browser, you get in the far right corner that what we call the pancake, that square, or the waffle, the square of little boxes. It looks like the pattern on a waffle. And you can locate the Google Classroom icon. And when you click on it, that opens up Google Classroom. And so you will see something similar to this, where your child or your students' classes are laid out for them in this manner. Now, over to the left of any single class are the 3 lines. Those 3 lines we call the pancake stack. See, that's where I'm getting my food metaphors mixed up. Those 3 lines open a menu, and that menu presents these choices to you that I made on the Zoom in. You have the button to go to see all of your classes. Below that, there's a button to see the calendar. Below that is a to-do list, and this can be a huge help to find out what exactly your child needs to get done. And below that, it shows me that this particular one I'm looking at is Mrs. Baxter's 7th grade pre-algebra class. So that's what we're going to focus on today. This is a class that Jana and I made up, so we could be, she could be I can be a student in her class. So let's look. When I look at that square for Mrs. Baxter's class, I want to bring your attention to 2 icons here on the lower right. And these can be really helpful icons for you. So the first icon, if you hold your mouse over it, will say, open your work for Mrs. Baxter's algebra class. And the little folder opens the folder for the class in Google Drive. So that is another way to find things if you feel you can't find them. And I'll explain more about how you can find your child's work on Google Drive. When you look back at the square, you'll notice that there are 3 vertical white dots in the right of the title. And there are 2 choices there. There's one choice to move, and there's a second choice to unenroll from the course. You probably actually don't see that. I see that because I am also a teacher. Now, remember I showed you the menu, the 3 horizontal lines, the pancake stack. Inside that menu is that to-do list, and I think this can be a really helpful tool for you. When you click on to do, you will see the things that are due. In our example here, this one is due tomorrow, and these 2 are due on Thursday. And you notice at the top of the screen, I have a circle around the word to do, but you can also click on done, and you can see the things your student or child has done. So you can compare what's still outstanding and what is done. Now, when you click on the class itself, you will see 3 tabs at the top. the first tab is called the stream, and the stream is basically like a bulletin board. It will show you everything that is happening in the class in the middle below this picture. And then on the left-hand side, look here, it tells you here's what's coming up. So you can see the next few things that you need to take care of immediately. All right, now next to the word stream is the word classwork. And in classwork, this is the stuff that you need to do for the teacher. And you can see there are several assignments here that as a student I need to take care of. The third tab over is the people tab, and this will show you the teachers for the course and the classmates. So one important thing I want to point out to you though is over by the teacher's name is an envelope, and that, if you click on that, allows you to send an email to the teacher. A lot of the teachers that we have been talking to have said they would love to hear from their students and their students' families or caregivers. So please don't miss that opportunity to reach out to the teacher to clarify if instructions are not clear or something like that. So I clicked back on the classwork tab to show you some icons that are just below the word classwork. The first one is Meet. Meet is Google's version of Zoom, more or less. It is a video meeting application that allows the teacher and the students to meet up live. Now, the nice thing about this, it is secure and it's only for this particular class. So the only people that can get into this are Mrs. Baxter and the students in her class. Next to that is a calendar for the class. So it's another way to look at what's coming up, what's due, what has passed. So if you like to look at a calendar view, please click on that. That will help you tremendously. And then over here again is the folder for the class on Google Drive. That is where you can find these assignments and the materials that are attached to those assignments. It's just another way of finding material. Typically, the best thing to do, though, is just work through the assignments here in the classwork page. There's one other button. This is a duplication of that button I showed you out on the square for the class. It's the exact same button. And again, when you click on that, it will take you to this screen that shows all the things that need to either be done or are done. And that's where this menu on the left-hand side helps. This will help you filter this list. And so there are three choices you can choose: assigned, returned with grade, or missing. So if we click on the filter for assigned, here are three things that as a student I need to complete. If I click on returned with grade, I should see things that have been returned to me with a grade from Mrs. Baxter. And then if I had anything missing, it would turn up here. So far, I don't have anything that's missing according to my teacher. However, if you do see missing, one of the things that you can do is have your student sign into Google Drive. Everybody has a Google Drive account if they are part of Google. And once you're in Drive, look for this folder called Classroom. And inside Classroom, you will see multiple folders for all of the classes that your student is enrolled in. So sometimes you might be missing something. This is a good place to check and see if it's there. Let's look more at finding assignments. So again, we're back on the classwork page, and we're going to click on that first assignment called Complete the Hyperdoc. And here it is kind of in a close-up view. And I see that my teacher has posted a Google Doc. So she's telling me I need to complete this document. So I'm going to click on that. And here's how we complete that assignment. I'm going to click on that. And what will happen is it will open this second window where I see it. And this could be a little bit confusing. But what happens here is first you need to work on this document and then click on the black turn in button. Okay? We think some students might be just clicking on turn in without ever doing the document. Right now it says that this is assigned. So I need to click on this document, work on it, and then turn it in, and I'll show you how that works. So when I click on the document, it opens up this Google Doc, and then I would need to do whatever Mrs. Baxter had instructed me. When I'm finished, up in the upper right corner, you will see a button. It's a light gray or light blue button that says Turn In. Notice next to it is this darker blue button that says Share. Do not click on the share button. That is completely different, and that will not get it back to your teacher. You need to click on the turn in button. When you do that, and we'll look at what happens next in the process, when you click on turn in, you get this window that's kind of gray that covers everything. And it says, are you sure you want to turn in your work? And you're going to click the words turn in again, and look what happens. Now, over here on the right, it says turned in. There's your document, and now the turn in button has changed to unsubmit. Unsubmit would allow you, if the student says, oh gee, I didn't do a very good job on that, I'd like to write on it again. If they click unsubmit, they can get this document back and they can make some more changes and then click turn in again. So if you unsubmit it, the teacher doesn't have it. You have to make sure that up here it says turned in order for the teacher to have it. And very important, just below that, you can make private comments back to the teacher when you turn in your work. You could say, you know, the directions weren't clear, or this assignment was too difficult for my child, or this was a wonderful assignment and my child enjoyed it. And whatever you put in there, that goes directly to the teacher and is only seen between your child or student and the teacher. I want to show you one other thing. We have heard from a lot of teachers that sometimes they are assigning a worksheet that is in PDF format. So if you're using Google Classroom and you're finding PDF assignments difficult to complete, one of the things I would direct you to is called the Chrome Web Store, and you can install this application extension called Kami, K-A-M-I. And Kami is wonderful. Once you install it in your browser, what happens is when you open a document that's been assigned from the teacher, there is a blue button at the top of the document that says Open with Kami. And when you open it with Kami, it actually allows you to write on this document. Otherwise, you would not be able with regular Google. So in this case, the question was rearrange these matchsticks, and I used a red marker from Kami and made my answer. And look what happens. When you make an answer, then there is a turn in button provided within Kami. When you do that, you get the same second window that says, do you want to turn it in? I asked for some samples, and here's one from a teacher where the student needs to mark some answers here. So again, this would be a good situation to use Kami, where you have to write in the answers in these squares. The ones that are not purple, those are numbers that were already provided by the teacher. So the teacher is looking for the student to write in these purple areas. Here's an assignment that a lot of art teachers have given to students. Draw me a picture on paper and then submit it back. They really mean take a picture of it and send it back. And in this case, there is nothing here. It says add or create. So what you need to do is somehow attach a picture and then submit it. So one thing you can do is install the Google Classroom app on the iPhone or an Android or an iPad. It makes it much easier to submit pictures than if you're using a laptop. Now, if you don't have this, obviously you can't do it this way, but if you have a mobile phone, this could be a way to complete this assignment. So here's Classroom on the iPhone, and I go to that assignment, and then I click on the bottom where it says your work, and then it says add an attachment. And what that will do is open up all the places I could add an attachment from. I'm going to choose pick a photo, and then it will go to my photos, and then I can click on a particular picture, which would be the picture of the drawing in this case, and then I would submit it, and that way the teacher gets the picture. One other thing I want to draw your attention to, when you're in Google Classroom, always on the lower left corner is a little circle with a question mark. And I zoomed that in so you could see when you click on it, it opens up this window that offers you some help or allows you to report an issue. Now, when you report an issue, that's actually going back to Google. So if it's something wrong, the first person you should reach out to is your teacher. But if you're stuck, sometimes the help center and the help community can help you figure out how to do something in Google Classroom. And again, the Google Classroom that you're seeing on my slides may not exactly match how you're seeing it with your particular device or because of your district's settings. But let me just quickly review what this looks like on different devices. So here's that same view of the classroom on an Android phone. So Samsung Galaxy, things like that. Here you saw already a picture of what it looks like on an iPhone. And remember, you can turn your phone sideways to make the picture a little bit bigger. That's one advantage if your child or student is using an Apple iPad, you're able to see a lot more. But notice that stream, classwork, and people are at the bottom instead of on the top. So that's one thing that can throw you off. And here it is on the computer. And notice now that stream, classwork, and people are up top here. Okay, so lots of different things that you can do with Google Classroom. At this point, I'm going to turn it back over to Heather.
Thanks so much, Kevin. Great overview. We appreciate that. Lots of good feedback and comments and questions in the chat. I know we're just about at time, but if you can hang around for a couple more minutes, I'm going to give you 4 tips and tricks for maximizing home learning. I'll try to do 4 tips in 4 minutes to close this out. The first tip is to create a dedicated learning space. Children need some consistency. They need somewhere that is a consistent space to work. So on the next slide, we have a picture and then a couple of different tips about the effective learning spaces. This is a picture actually of my neighbors. These two children need to work in separate spaces. So that's one way that you might be able to get creative if there's more than one child, where you put them basically in two different spaces, in two different rooms. But the most effective learning spaces really feel like school. They should be consistent. Kids sit in the same spot, the same seat in school every single day. So a consistent space at home is really important. And it can look like any number of things. Here we have one at a dining room table. Then on the next slide, we have a desk. So again, side by side, might be a little bit cramped, but hopefully it works for this kiddo. And then one last picture, another desk with just laptop and some folders stuck there. Looks like it might be in a bedroom, but something that is consistent, something that makes it feel like school, somewhere that the kids have a dedicated space, as free from distraction as possible. Second tip is to create a checklist every single day. For me, as a parent, I have a first grade child, and this was a sanity saver for me, having a checklist every single day of what he has to do. I log into his Google Classroom account every morning and I look at what needs to be accomplished for the day, and I create a checklist for him. Now this one is a second grade student. One of my friends is also doing this, but it promotes organization. Kids are not inherently organized, so you can support them by being organized. It promotes independence. For my son, who is 6 years old, he knows what to do. He knows I need to go to ELA and I need to do these tasks, and I need to go to math in Google Classroom and I need to do these tasks. So there's a little bit of independence. Now he's not completely independent. He still needs a lot of guidance. He's 6 after all. But there is this ownership in the learning process and that sense of accomplishment. If you're anything like me, and if the children in your care are anything like me, I love a list because I love that feeling when I cross something off a list. And kids really feel good about that. So there's one example in second grade. On the next slide, we have 2 other examples the parents have done. They just create that checklist and you do it the night before. If the kids can do it with you, make that checklist with you, that's great. If they can create the checklist on their own, it just is a really nice organizer for kids. I love this. Then the next tip is to build in some breaks. Kids do an awful lot of sitting in front of screens when they are learning remotely. The experts talk about 2 big things, the cognitive load limitations and the eye fatigue. Now, when we talk cognitive load limitation, what we're really talking about is the amount that the working memory can handle for a certain duration of time. And the experts really, they say that movement is one of the very best things we can do to refocus the brain and to sort of reset where the brain is ready. That's why recess is so important. That's why phys ed class is so important. So the recommendations, some research says more like once every 45 minutes or so, but if you can work in breaks and get the kids to move about once an hour, it's amazing what they're able to accomplish and how they're able to refocus when they sit back down. And then there's also this issue of eye fatigue. Screen eye fatigue happens at 20 minutes. So 20 minutes of looking at a screen, the eyes start to glaze over no matter what they're looking at. But the good news is doing something away from the screen resets that 20 minutes. So if they're reading or if they're doing an activity on screen, if you can just build in within the schedule or encourage them to build in, do something offline, do something on paper for just a moment. And then on the next slide, I have a couple of different suggestions. These are things that have worked for me for suggestions for break. If it's one of those indoor days where it's yucky and cold like yesterday was, here it is May and it still feels like winter. You can have them do things like walk 5 laps around the living room or run up and down the stairs. But if it will drive you crazy that they're running up and down the stairs, don't make them run up and down the stairs. Find something else. I love YouTube Kids videos for yoga and exercise just to get them moving. And then if you have the space to take them outside, if you have a dog, let them walk the dog up and down the block, up and down the street, kick a ball around the yard, or even just find a sunny spot and do a 30-second breathing exercise. It just helps to get that movement and refocus them. Then one last tip is to provide opportunities for kids to interact with their friends virtually. Kids are social creatures at school. Learning happens in a social context, and they're missing, even if we don't see it and recognize it, they are missing the time that they would normally be spending with other kids. So a couple of tips for the social interaction and also the academic interaction with others. 3 different ways you can do that. You may have a teacher who has Zoom and Google Meet, where they schedule those regularly with the kids to do some socializing and also to do some academic work. If your child or the child in your care, if their teacher is not able to do that, you can certainly schedule those yourself. Use FaceTime, use Google Meet, use Zoom. All of those are free. You can schedule them yourselves. You can schedule them, have the kids schedule them, do them during breaks, or even if the math homework today is really hard, I want to work with a friend, get them on Zoom at the same time, get them on Google Meet at the same time to collaborate and work through that math. That's not cheating, it's collaborative learning. And then don't forget the power of old-fashioned phone calls with friends, with family, with anybody that they would need to interact with that they can't. We see a lot of Zoom overload if we're on Zoom all the time, and it's nice to sometimes just have a phone conversation. So on the next slide, there's a picture. This is actually my son. He is on a Zoom with his classmates, and you can see they can put it in gallery view so that they can see all of the faces of the other kids who are in his class and on Zoom at that same time. So that pretty much wraps up our content. We thank you for hanging around with us and for joining us today. Here, as Jen mentioned, are the resources from Common Sense Media. Again, we'll send this out as a Zoom. We'll also send out the slides, and these are all links, so you can link to those resources from Jen. And really, more than anything else, guys, just hang in there. This is hard work, but it's good work, and we're doing the right thing for these kids based on the circumstances in society, and we will get through it, and everyone will be okay. So thank you all very much for joining us today. Look in your email that you used to register early next week, and we'll send out the information. Thanks very much.